What if I told you that the people who lived closest to queens, the ones who bathed them, dressed them, and stood silently in the shadows, weren't living a dream, but a nightmare? Behind the palace doors was not a fantasy world. It was a disease-ridden prison, filled with stench, danger, and filth so bad it made people go nose-blind. This is the brutal truth history tried to bury, and once you hear it, you'll never look at royalty the same way again. Have you ever really stopped to think about what life was truly like for the people who lived closest to queens, the ones who shared their chambers, handled their clothes, and carried out their most private tasks? We're usually shown a polished picture, shiny crowns, sparkling jewels, grand banquets, and rich fabrics flowing through golden halls. But that dreamy version? It's a lie. Behind those towering stone walls and golden mirrors, palace life was filthy, suffocating, and downright dangerous. And those who suffered most weren't kings or queens, they were the servants, the invisible army working day and night behind the scenes. The medieval court, the Victorian palace, and royal households from many eras were not elegant, not clean, and definitely not safe. They were hotbeds of rot, parasites, bad smells, and constant fear. A single mistake could cost you everything: your job, your safety, even your life. And worst of all, nobody ever talks about it. But today, we will. We're lifting the velvet curtain and pulling back the layers of silk and satin to reveal a horrific, foul-smelling reality that history has tried to forget. Get ready, because what you're about to hear will shatter every royal fantasy you've ever believed. Still imagining soft rose petals in bathtubs and women dabbing perfume on clean skin? It's time to wake up. In the medieval world, bathing wasn't just rare, it was feared. People believed that bathing in warm water opened up the pores and let illness leak in. That meant queens, yes, even royal queens, might bathe only once every few months, sometimes less. Instead of washing, they smothered themselves in thick perfume, white powder, and greasy oils to try to hide the body odor. Now picture this. You're the servant who has to dress her. That means getting up close, face to skin with weeks of sweat, dirt, and unwashed flesh. And those royal gowns, they weren't tossed into a laundry basket. They were never truly washed. Servants had to scrape off filth, brush away crumbs and dried sweat, and somehow make them look new again. It was less styling and more cleaning a biohazard with a fancy brush. Even in the supposedly cleaner Victorian age, the improvements were small. The rich might bathe once or twice a week, but indoor plumbing was rare and real toilets barely existed. Instead, queens and nobles used chamber pots, little portable toilets kept near their beds. Guess who emptied them? The servants, again and again, several times a day. Picture waking up at dawn, barely awake, and carrying a heavy pot full of urine and feces down a slippery, dark staircase in a freezing castle. That was your morning routine. If your garbage smells after 1 week, imagine a palace filled with hundreds of unwashed people, stale sweat, rotting food, perfume, and poop from every floor. And guess what? There was no escape. Servants lived in cramped rooms near kitchens, animals, or waste pits. The smells of smoke, manure, rotten food, and wet hay clung to their hair, clothes, and beds. Some worked in such filth for so long that they lost their sense of smell completely, their bodies adapting in the worst possible way. And let's not forget, this was all happening before toothpaste and deodorant were common. People's breath reeked, and their bodies stank. Now imagine tying a corset or brushing hair while standing inches from a queen who hadn't bathed in weeks. But the nightmare didn't stop at bad smells. It went much deeper, into the lungs, the bloodstream, and the grave. Being a servant wasn't just dirty, it was often deadly. They were forced to handle bloody rags, lice-ridden bedsheets, and disease-carrying waste daily. Every load of laundry was soaked in sweat, filth, and even bodily fluids that carried deadly infections. In a world without modern medicine, they faced plague, smallpox, tuberculosis, and more, and they were always the first to get sick. Palaces were packed tight. Servants shared tiny airless rooms. One cough could wipe out the whole staff. And parasites? They were everywhere. Lice, fleas, bedbugs. They thrived in the folds of royal clothing and stuffed bedding. And when the queen had lice, it was the servant's job to carefully comb through every strand of hair, even if those bugs jumped straight onto their own scalp. Doctors were expensive, and for the royal family only. Servants had no access to care. If they collapsed from illness, they were left behind, unpaid and forgotten. If they died, someone else took their place by morning. Being a servant meant being used up and replaced like a dirty rag. And then there was fashion, the cruel joke at the heart of court life. Those enormous royal gowns, they were made of velvet, silk, lace and embroidery, and they could weigh over 30 pounds. Just lifting them was exhausting. Dressing a queen was like building a house out of fabric every single day. These gowns were never properly washed. Servants had to hang them, air them out, brush off the crusted dirt, and soak them in perfume to mask the rotting body odor. And under the gown, the queen's undergarments were often left on for days, even weeks. By the time they came off, they could be hiding painful rashes, open sores or infections, and it was the servant's job to peel them off, clean the skin, and hold their breath through it all. Dressing a queen wasn't just hard, it was a high-stakes test. Every ribbon had to be tied just right. Every button, every seam had to be perfect. One wrong move and you could be screamed at, punished or dismissed on the spot. And the job? It never ended. Servants didn't get weekends, they didn't get holidays, they didn't get sleep. They were expected to serve from sunup to long after midnight. Your body didn't belong to you, it belonged to your queen. If she called for you at 3 a.m, you got up. If she wanted you to hold her chamber pot while she squatted over it, you obeyed without blinking. Disobedience wasn't an option. Ever. One misstep could mean a beating, dismissal, or total ruin. And for the poor, losing your job didn't just mean embarrassment, it meant starvation, homelessness, and death. So you kept going, because you had no choice. Because outside the palace walls, life was even worse. There was no safety net, no shelter, no second chances. Leaving meant hunger, cold, and begging in the streets. Inside the palace, you had food scraps and a place to sleep, no matter how filthy or dangerous it was. It was survival, but barely, and it destroyed them. Servants lived in constant exposure to waste and sickness. Their bodies were worn down by endless scrubbing, bending, lifting, and hauling. Malnutrition made everything worse. Most died young, burned out by work that chewed through their strength and tossed them aside. The palace might have looked like heaven, but for the ones serving inside it, it was a gilded cage, locked from the inside. So how did they do it? How did anyone survive? Some found ways to cope. A little pouch of herbs tucked in a sleeve, a scented cloth to press against the nose, small tricks to fight the unbearable stench. Others found comfort in each other. Deep friendships with fellow servants became their only relief. A shared smile, a whispered joke, tiny moments of human kindness in a world built on silence and suffering. But nothing could fully erase the truth. Being a servant to royalty was one of the hardest, dirtiest, and most brutal jobs in history. It demanded everything: your body, your freedom, your life, and gave almost nothing in return. So next time you see a queen gliding through a palace in some movie, draped in silk and diamonds, remember this: behind her beauty stood a silent army of suffering souls. The ones emptying chamber pots at midnight, the ones combing lice from her hair, the ones holding their breath while dressing her sweat-soaked body. They made the palace shine, but they paid for it in blood, sweat, and years of stolen life. Would you have survived as a royal servant? Could you have handled the smell, the danger, the punishment, and the never-ending work? Or would you have run the second they handed you your first chamber pot? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. And if this shocked you, and you want to uncover more brutal truths history never told you, like, subscribe, and share this video. Because believe me, it only gets darker from here.